Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Dark Souls 3. More specifically, the stuff that I saw while I was at Gamescom. So as you guys might be aware, I've gotten to see Dark Souls 3 twice this year. I got to see it when I was at E3 for the very first time, and now I got to see it at Gamescom as well as actually get my hands on it, even though it was for a very short amount of time and I kind of fumbled it up. But we'll get into that as we go further on in the video. Now, this video is going to be more of a complemental video to the one that I did about on E3, because there's a lot of information that I kind of want to try and avoid and repeat. I know that it's kind of almost impossible for me not to repeat some of these things, but still, if you feel that you would like to know more, you might want to check out the E3 video as well from the gameplay that I saw there. And there's also a video that I did with Globku, who was with me at Gamescom. There's a video that we both did for TGN. So the links to both the E3 video as well as the video of me and Globku discussing Dark Souls 3 are going to be in the description of this video. So if you want more information about Dark Souls 3, you might want to check out that stuff. And again, it's going to be in the description. Just click those links, check out those other videos. Now, let's get started, because I want to avoid, doing the usual stuff where I just ramble on and on and on and on and, just basically not get to any point. Let's just get right on to things. I want to start by talking about the presentation, because there were a couple of new things in the presentation that they did for Gamescom, even though mostly it was the same thing as E3. It was the same level, it was the same character, it was the same things that they were showing, but this time around they actually had the UI already in there, and there were a couple of new things that I noticed. So starting off with the UI, there was a blue mana bar, which was between the health pool and the stamina pool. There was a mana bar in there. Now, I asked about that, and I got immediately told that this is just placeholder, so it doesn't really mean anything. But it could mean, and this is just like, a little bit of speculation on my part, it could mean that we might be getting, the mana system from Demon Souls, where you would have a mana bar, and maybe there's items that will regenerate your mana bar. I don't know. I'm kind of going after the whole Demon Souls thing. Was where that mana bar took me. And to be honest, I kind of prefer the mana bar over the limited uses of spells, because I think it is a lot more of a straightforward system than having limits on the amount of times you can cast a spell. But that's a personal preference, and it doesn't mean that it reflects everyone's opinion. It's just me personally, I would love to go back to the mana system in Demon Souls. I feel it is a better way of doing things. But again, this is going to vary depending on each player. Just know that there was a mana bar there, and they just said it's placeholder, so it might not mean anything, but it might mean a couple of things as well. Who knows? Beyond that, there was also a Sunbro logo in the Covenant location for Dark Souls 2. So it does seem like we're probably not going to get a humanity counter in line with what we had for Dark Souls 1. Instead, we're going to have the Covenant symbol there. Does this mean that we're going to have the same thing that we had in Dark Souls 2, where your character died and he slowly would lose his humanity and become more and more hollow? I don't know if that is the case, but I would be surprised if it was, because from what I can tell, most of the mechanics that are coming into play for Dark Souls 3 are more in line with what you've seen in Dark Souls 1 than what you've seen in Dark Souls 2. So there you go. I don't think that is going to be a thing. The whole thing about your character slowly hollowing out and slowly losing chunks of his health, I don't think that's going to be a thing. But that's, I could be wrong. Again, there's still a lot of time from here until when the game is done. So this is just my personal take on it. After that, something that I hadn't seen at E3, the kick is back. So, the kick for breaking guard that you had in Dark Souls 1 wasn't present in Dark Souls 2. In Dark Souls 2, you had the little thing where you would move your hand and shove enemies out of the way or something. I never liked that. I thought the timing on that was terrible. It was very hard to actually time it in order to hit an enemy properly. Now you have the good old-fashioned kick, and I'm glad it's back. And I know that some of you guys might say, oh, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Trust me. For me, personally, it makes a hell of a difference. Once again, something that I noticed during the presentation was faster movement. But I'm going to get into further detail in terms of the movement stuff a little bit further on. And something new that I also noticed in this presentation that I didn't notice at E3 was the fact that the short bow fires extremely fast when you're coming out of a dodge. I'm not sure if they changed that or not, or if there was just so much information at E3 that I was just overwhelmed at the time, and now I had seen a whole bunch of it. I was noticing more nuanced stuff. but definitely like when you dodge and you fire the short bow out of a dodge, it was like super fast. It's almost like by the time you press R1 after doing the dodge, the arrow is about just ready to come out. There's almost no animation of you just pulling the bow back, you know, because it's almost like he's coming out of the dodge already with the arrow fully pulled back, and then he just releases. But yeah, that was something that I noticed this time around. Not sure if that is new or not. Just, again, stuff that I noticed. Now, on the topic of the fact that the character moves faster, and now I'm mixing in information from my gameplay session, from the presentation, and from an interview that I did with Miyazaki. There was me and 2 other media people there, as well as Globku. We were all just kind of like interviewing him, turn-based style. And there were only 30 minutes, so let me tell you about that particular interview. I did not get to ask all the questions I wanted, but I did get to ask a whole bunch of stuff. So the next topic that I'm going to be talking about has information from all these 3 things: the presentation, my gameplay session, and the interview with Miyazaki-san. Speaking of that interview, though, before I move onwards, I shared that interview with the German spy so that he could, you know, make his own video about that stuff. And if you are a Souls personality, feel free to contact me through Twitter or whatever, and I can send that to you as well. The only reason I'm just not making it public is because I'm pretty sure the devs don't want that interview made public, because otherwise they would have allowed me to record it on video. So, you know, I just want people to be making videos from it. I don't want people to just post the whole thing online, because I think that's kind of dumb. So yeah, if you're a Souls personality, you want that interview that I had with Miyazaki, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be sure to get it to you. But anyway, going back on topic, the next thing I want to talk about was encumbrance. So as you guys have noticed, there's been a theme going on, which is the character is going to move faster in Dark Souls 3. That is intentional. They said they want characters to be moving faster in Dark Souls 3, and the gameplay demo that they did, and you know that most people played at Gamescom, the character was moving a lot faster than you would expect for a character that is wearing heavy armor. Now, they did say this was made specifically for the purpose of the demo, which means that when you actually get to the final product, if you're wearing heavy armor, you're going to have to offset that by having, you know, a lot more in your endurance stat or something like that. They didn't discuss stats specifically, so don't start, you know, oh, there's going to be an endurance stat. I don't know. They didn't talk about stats specifically, but that is just what I'm assuming. You're going to have to invest more points into endurance if you want to keep, you know, wearing heavy armor and whatnot. But something that they mentioned is that they wanted to give the players a lot of options. And it seemed to me from the way that they were talking, because you got to remember that it's also very hard to interpret these things, because Miyazaki is speaking in Japanese, and then this other person is translating it to English, and it makes it hard for us to, you know, to really get all the information we want. But basically, from the way they were speaking, it seems to me that they are making an effort to allow people to be able to wear heavy armor and still be fast. Now, obviously, there's going to be some kind of a drawback to that. It's not going to be as simple as just, okay, you can wear heavy armor now and you're going to be like super fast and it's going to be awesome. But basically, they said there's going to be options for players that want to have that heavier play style. But don't think of it as a return to the whole giant dad builds. I don't think that is going to be a thing. It's just they do want to make sure that users have options, and it's not just about being either super heavy armor or super light armor, because options was something that they kept mentioning as we talked about pretty much everything. They said there's going to be a wide range of tactical options for anything that you want to do. They also specifically said this is not going to be like Bloodborne, where your character, you know, the wielding a heavy weapon or wielding heavy armor made absolutely no difference. That is not what they're trying to do with Dark Souls 3. So if you were hoping it was going to be more like Bloodborne, where you could just move faster regardless of what you were wearing, that's not what they're doing. But they are giving you options in that regard. Now, there's also another thing which they kept mentioning, which is the fact that the enemies are going to be harder. The difficulty of the game supposedly is going to be harder than previous Souls games, but that is because they said the control of the character is going to be greatly improved. So you're going to be able to, again, that's where the moving faster thing kind of comes into play. It's a little bit confusing still, but it's like, it seems that you will be able to move faster and your character is going to be more responsive when you are playing, even if you are wearing heavy armor, you're still going to be faster than you were in the previous Souls titles. And that is why they want to, they want the enemies to be harder. So basically they're making the game a little bit harder, but at the same time, they're giving you the tools to overcome those challenges. And this, when I say making the game harder, I'm being very loose with my words, because that is not exactly what they say. Miyazaki likes to speak a little bit in riddles. Miyazaki is like, we're not making the game harder. We're presenting the players with challenges and the tools to overcome them. But overall, the sense that I got from that conversation is, yes, the game is going to be harder. The game is going to be slightly faster paced, but it's not going to be on the level of Bloodborne. So it's going to be somewhere in between Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne, I feel, is going to be the tempo of the game. Or at least that's the idea that I've got from what I've played, as well as what they were saying. Now, when I played, I want to start talking about this encumbrance and the speed and whatnot, specifically in terms of locking on. Because if you guys remember, in Dark Souls 2, when you locked on, your character started moving a lot slower. It's almost like he was walking on top of molasses. And this time, I can definitely confirm to you guys, after you lock on, it's not going to be that. It's not going to be any difference at all. It's going to be just like Dark Souls 1. You had no difference in terms of how fast you could move once you locked on. And that is a great thing, because that was one of the most frustrating things to me about Dark Souls 2, was how slow your character would become once you were locked onto an enemy. It's almost like you were being punished for locking on, and you would usually perform better if you simply did not use the lock-on feature. Your character would just flat out move faster. That is not going to be the case in Dark Souls 3, at least from what I've played. And if you guys are wondering how did it feel to play it, it felt very polished. You still have that weight that you feel of the weapon as you are hitting your enemies, very much like previous Souls titles. I mean, if you've played a Souls game before, this is going to be very familiar to you once you get into the game. It's going to be very simple for you to just get in there and get used to the controls. It's not going to be that hard. There are a couple of nuanced things that we will get into. And those are the battle arts. And I do want to start talking about battle arts now, because battle arts are going to be something that is going to completely change the game as we know it. So what are battle arts about? I've already mentioned battle arts. They're essentially like this special attack that you have that is associated with a specific weapon of your character, and different weapons will have different battle arts. And this was a question that I had, because I was like, so are you going to have battle arts per weapon type? Are you going to have battle arts per weapon? How is this going to work? And essentially the answer they gave me is that each weapon is going to have its own battle art. And what that means is, like, if you have 2 or 3 different straight swords, they're all going to have different battle arts. And this is going to expand the moveset of the game, like, exponentially. I mean, just think about it. You're going to have all of these different weapons, and each of them is going to have a different battle art to it. And these battle arts are not just restricted to sword moves, as we've seen previously, because previously in the other video, I talked to you guys about the battle art for the straight sword, which was something where your character would, like, dash forward and attack, the battle art for the great sword, where you could, like, have that attack that would throw enemies up in the air, and the battle art for the dual scimitars, which would, like, make your character spin almost like a whirlwind, right? All of those were physical attacks. Well, I played with a character in the gameplay demo that I played. He was wielding a battle axe, and the battle art for the battle axe was essentially a war cry. So your character would do almost like a roar, and that would stagger your enemies. And I thought that was like, whoa, this is like completely different from the other stuff that we're doing with these other weapons. And it basically shows you that there's a lot more to it than just, the basic the other more basic battle arts were just doing another set of physical attacks, another move set, so to speak, to your weapon. As a matter of fact, I'm almost like starting to look at battle arts the same way that you would look weapon specific skills, like Ornstein's spear that can shoot out lightning spears and that kind of stuff, That is more what I'm starting to look at in terms of battle arts. So the battle art, how does it actually work in terms of controls, right? All of the controls for the game are pretty much the same. There's one thing that I noticed, even though it is very subtle, but you do have charge attacks now in Dark Souls 3. You can charge up your attacks using R2 if you have a PlayStation controller, or the right trigger if you're on the Xbox controller. And you will be able to charge up your attacks, which will deal more damage, all that stuff, right? And then the battle arts themselves are bind it to L2 or the left trigger. Now you guys are going to be like, wait a minute. That's the parry button. What are you doing messing with the parry button? And I specifically asked Miyazaki about that. And because during the gameplay session that I had, you weren't able to parry with a lot of the items that you had available to you. So like, for instance, if I had a regular shield and a weapon, I would be using the weapon's battle art. But they also gave us a buckler, so like, a lighter shield in the gameplay demo. And once you switch to the lighter shield, the battle art thing switched to parrying. So instead of doing the battle art of your weapon, you would be parrying. So I asked, like, so are we not going to be able to parry with regular shields? Is it going to be like a small shield only? What is your intention there with the whole parrying thing being associated with the same button as the battle art? And essentially what they said was, okay, so there's a lot of players that are comfortable parrying, right? So they can always just go ahead with their parry builds and do whatever they want. But there's also a lot of players in the Dark Souls universe that aren't that good at parrying. I'm not even going to say that I'm that good at parrying. I mean, I know how to parry. I've parried a whole bunch of times, but I'm not the best player at parrying, not even close. And what they're saying is they want to give these players options, because essentially, if you are not parrying, that L2 is a wasted button that you are never going to use, really, unless you're using, a heavy shield and you're trying to shield slam people. But most people don't do that because it's not a very viable thing to use. So what they want is to give players choices. So there's definitely going to be medium shields, and I don't think heavy shields though, but definitely going to be medium shields that you will be able to use parry with. It's not limited to smaller shields, but they want players to have to choose between, having the parry option and having the option to use your battle art. And I thought that was interesting because it actually opens up a lot more, options. I mean, there's always the option, which I didn't think of at the time because I was just like so overwhelmed with everything that was happening at Gamescom. But there's always the option of you just like, you just switch to your hand and try bare hand parry, for instance. I'm not sure if that's a thing because we didn't have access to the game's inventory. We didn't have access to the items. As a matter of fact, the items that we picked up in the gameplay demo, they were automatically equipped for us. So like, for instance, I picked up a great sword. It was automatically equipped onto my inventory. I didn't even have to do anything. I just had to like select it. So yeah, I had a couple of questions of people asking me, did you get to see the item descriptions, all that stuff? No, didn't get to see any of that. Okay, so beyond that, like I said, I talked about battle arts, the fact that battle arts are going to be in the same button as your parry, and that is going to be something that is going to somewhat force you to make a choice between parrying or using your battle art. There's also players that are going to be using it in two-handed, which means they're going to be using the battle arts in two-hand mode. So there's just a lot of options. That's essentially what battle arts are bringing to the game. A lot more options for how you want to build your character. And I think that's a good thing, in my personal opinion. Now, naturally, one of the things that is going to jump into your mind, at least that's what it jumped into mine instantly, was like, okay, so if every single weapon in the game, it's going to have its own battle art, they have to do less weapons, right? They just can't do ridiculous amounts of weapons and have all of them be original and have interesting and different battle arts. So I asked about that. I was like, so are you going to have less weapons for this game? Is that what's going to happen? And they said, well, we're not sure we're going to be able to get to the level of Dark Souls 2, because Dark Souls 2 just has like thousands upon thousands of weapons, right? But they will definitely have a lot more weapons than they had in Bloodborne, because they realized Bloodborne obviously had a lot less weapons because of the weapon switching mechanic and all that. And to be honest, I was not against that at all. I think that is a valid way to, a valid take on the game. I actually liked the fact that it had less weapons, but each weapon was extremely important and it had its own moveset and play style. But they definitely said it's not going to be like Bloodborne. There's going to be a lot more weapons than you have in Bloodborne, and each weapon will still have its own battle art, making it unique. Which again, I think is a positive thing. Each weapon being unique and being different, it's going to be a lot better than having 20 straight swords that essentially do the same thing with different scaling, But that's my personal take on that. You guys feel free to leave me comments and tell me how you feel about that stuff. Then while we were on that interview, there were more people asking questions. So they were asking about how is Dark Souls 3 going to differentiate itself from other Souls games, And mostly they referenced the faster movement, which they also associate faster movement with the character being more responsive, and players being more comfortable playing their characters, and that is what would allow them to make the game slightly harder, and the fact that Battle Arts expanded the tactical options of the players. While we're on the topic of Battle Arts, I guess I could talk a little bit about Magic, because I know that a lot of people are going to want to know about Magic, and let me just tell you right ahead, there's not a whole lot to say about Magic, because they didn't show Magic at the demo. The closest thing we've seen to Magic was the battle art of the Battle Axe, which was essentially a war cry. They didn't show a whole lot of Magic, but they did say there will be Magic, and on top of that, they said there will be specific battle arts for Magic. So the battle arts are not just for physical weapons. There's going to be some kind of battle arts for Magic as well. Then there was a question that I asked, which was a very specific thing, which was the fact that if you guys seen the Gamescom trailer, you can actually see the character sticking a bonfire sword onto another character. And I asked about that, and they said that is definitely a new mechanic that is going to be coming to Dark Souls 3. It is a mechanic that you haven't seen before in any of their titles, and they are not talking about it. And I was just like, oh, really? Why would you do this to me? They were just like, oh, it's a new mechanic. It's going to be amazing. We hope you're excited to hear more about it in the future. And I was like, no. And there was a lot of answers in that interview that were unfortunately like that, because even though they want to hype people up, they don't want to give too much away, which I can understand. I can understand why that is. There was someone else who also asked for clarification on the class system, and I thought I would bring it up in this video because usually people seem to get confused about this. I personally never get confused about it, but everybody always sees, oh, there's this one character. It looks like this time you're going to have classes that are going to restrict how you play in the game. It seems that people seem to get this mindset. Like, for instance, Bloodborne, everybody thought, oh, we're just going to have that one character to play with, and it's going to be the same thing over and over. No, you guys. No, you're obviously going to be able to make builds just like you've done in any other Souls game. There is no restrictions in terms of classes or anything like that. So next up, someone asked if someone asked a question about how Dark Souls 3 was not going to be the last title in the series, if they wanted to talk about their new projects and whatnot. Miyazaki didn't really disclose anything, but they did mention that From Software is already working on a new project, but I don't believe it's Souls related, or it could be. I don't know. They didn't specify that all too well. Anyway, now I guess I could talk about multiplayer, which is something that a lot of people are going to want to know about. And let me just tell you ahead of time, they didn't clarify too much on that either. But they did say, in terms of multiplayer, there's going to be summoning signs like they've had for the previous Souls titles. There's going to be an online covenant system. Therefore, the Sunbro symbol that I told you guys was at the presentation at the start. They say that online multiplayer is going to be simplified because they believe that the multiplayer in the previous games was a little bit too complex, and they felt that players were just too spread out through the game world, and they want to try and gather players in certain areas. You could almost argue that they did that for Dark Souls 2 with the Belfry areas, sorry, with the Belfry areas, but I'm not sure that was the proper way to go, so hopefully they can do something better this time. And they said, and this is, again, one of those cryptic sentences that I'm always like, what are you trying to say, Miyazaki? And he's just like, through multiplayer, there will be several changes happening in the game. And I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I don't know. I guess maybe they could be talking about people invading you, and after they invading you, there might be some kind of tendency thing. No, they didn't say anything about tendency. Don't quote me on that at all. I'm just saying, if they're going to have changes happen in the game, what kind of changes could those be? I mean, leave me your thoughts in the comments. So let's see. What else? Then they also asked Miyazaki when he was going to produce a title about Berserk, and Miyazaki said that he is too big of a fan of Berserk, and he would probably not be able to remain objective while working on that title, so that's probably not going to be a thing. Personally, when that question was asked, I was like, dude, what are you talking about? He's already made he's working on his third Berserk title, because pretty much we all know there's a heavy inspiration from Berserk in the Dark Souls universe, so... in the Dark Souls games, I mean. So there you go. I think that's pretty much all the info that I got. I would like to give a little bit more touch on the level design, The level design felt amazing. Like I was just running around, like I said, I was trying to find out this secret boss, and I found a couple of interesting passages and interesting different paths that you could go through that will lead to the same place in the same level. Like if you guys have seen the video and you see this big dragon that shoots fire on top of the enemies and whatnot, I was able to actually go behind that dragon without killing him. I was able to go behind the dragon, and behind the dragon there was a door there that you could open that would lead to a different area. So I want to say that by the time they stopped me at the demo, I was just like this close of getting to the boss, and it was very frustrating for me not finding the secret boss. But I think I was just like right there. I almost had it, almost found the secret boss. But no, I did not find the secret boss, and as a matter of fact, I ended up not even fighting the other boss that was there. But in terms of combat, it felt very solid. I played with the greatsword and the battle axe, but like I said, I didn't fight that much. I mostly skipped through mobs because I was just running all over the levels, which you can do. I didn't feel like the enemies were being a little bit unfair in terms of how they were tracking you and stuff, like I felt in some situations in Dark Souls. I felt like I would be able to, after a couple of tries, I would be able to skip to wherever I wanted to in the level, which is something that I find is kind of essential for the Dark Souls experience. You want to learn these levels, and then you want to be able to navigate through them just dashing through. But again, that is a personal thing. So hopefully this brought you guys a couple more new things about Dark Souls 3. I know that it's not a whole lot, but I wanted to make sure to share everything I know with you guys. So yeah, if you have any questions, leave them to me in the comment sections. And like I said, if you're a Souls personality, you want to do a video with using the information that I got on the interview, I'll be glad to send you the interview. I just want to make sure this interview does not get published as is, because I'm pretty sure that's not what the developers wanted. So yeah, just thank you very much for watching. Comments, feedback, all the kinds of good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.